Okay, as normal, just going to wait for a few moments, getting settled in, and we'll get started here. All right. Hello. Hello. All right. Yes, again, it's always the awkward moment of just waiting for a few people to join on so we don't have to repeat. So we'll get started here as I start to see friends showing up. Welcome. 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 Hello. Hello. All right. So before we get really started today, just going to be talking mostly about the Bhagavad Gita, but of course there'll be many different things coming up today, and we'll see where it goes. Good morning. All right. So let's go ahead and begin. Dharma kshetre, Guru kshetre, Samvita, Yuyutsavaha, Mamakas, Pandavaschaiva, Kimakurvata, Sindhyaha. And that's how the Bhagavad Gita begins. In the middle of a battlefield, and we'll get to there. And somebody's asking, the blind king is asking, what's happening? And then the rest of the Gita is the answer to what's happening on this battlefield. We'll get back to all that in a moment. But Dharma Kshetre, Guru Kshetre. Dharma is the very first word, so keep that in mind. We'll get back to that too. All right, good morning. Some of you are celebrating Easter. Happy Easter. Passover maybe for some of us. And for some, it's spring. Actually, for everyone, it's spring. Welcome to spring. So again, we'll be talking about the Gita, but I want to start with something. Maybe some of you have the Antwerp Yoga newsletter. And this is sponsored or brought to you with the Antwerp Yoga Facebook page. And in the newsletter, we chose to use Albert Camus' quote, something about the harshest winter brings out this invincible spring within. Well, it's summer. How about that? The invincible summer. Get your quotes right, Robert. And so, but what's in between is the spring, and that's where we are. We're in the spring, okay? So you have the winter, you have a harsh winter, and then there's the spring, the summer, that we find this invincible summer within us. But somewhere in between is this spring, and then this is where we are. And so today I was just thinking we could use the Gita, or we can look at the Gita about how to get through this spring from the harsh winter that we've experienced into this invincible summer that is before us. And I think that the Gita has a lot to say. All right. Secondly, why the Gita? So in the past few weeks we've been talking about the Yoga Sutras. And as I've mentioned, I'm helping with the Antwerp Yoga teacher training, and in most teacher trainings you have the Gita and the Yoga Sutras. But the question is, why? I mean, some of you may have kids at home right now who are doing the homeschooling, and I have a teenager. And what's the best way not to get something done is say, you have to do this right now. Yeah, let me know how that works out for you. So when we say, okay, if you're going to do some sort of teacher training, or if you're interested in yoga, then it's like, oh, if you say, you have to read the Gita, or you have to read the Yoga Sutras, it doesn't really make any sense. Why? Why do you have to? How do they speak to us? What can we learn from them? And that's really, hopefully, what we'll get out of today is what can we learn from the Bhagavad Gita? Not just because you're supposed to, or you should. It's a much more interesting question of, well, why? What can I learn from it? What can I gain from it? Where can I go with it? So those are some of the questions we'll be looking at today and thinking about. Camus is also appropriate. He wrote La Peste, the plague. And during times of trouble, we start to think about, okay, who are we? And then we start to find out sometimes the Swarupa that we looked at with the Yoga Sutras. Sometimes we find out that Swarupa, the true nature. Sometimes it's challenging, not always fun. There's another story, though, with Camus that we can think about with this, is his myth of Sisyphus. And Sisyphus is this person who has to roll this rock for his punishment up and down the hill. And keep rolling it up, and he keeps coming back down. He rolls it up, and he comes back down. He rolls it up, and he comes back down. At the end of this essay about this character, Camus says, well, we have to imagine that Sisyphus is happy. How in the world could Sisyphus be happy? Dharma. So we'll get to that in a moment too. Dharma. How can we be happy when to the outside world it may not look like we should be, or even possible? So again, these are some of the questions that will be coming up. Questions of Dharma. Dharma is this concept of duty, self-duty, and then to a bigger picture. Okay, but back then to the Gita. Why read the Gita? What can it help us with? So today's talk is finding your yoga path with the help of the Gita. And if you were with us last time with the Yoga Sutras, we talked about this concept of marga. Marga is a path. This is where that concept of path comes from. And there's paths in yoga. And we're going to see that in the Gita, we get several different paths that we can choose from. And so one of the things is making this conscious decision about which maybe path is best for us, not for, our friend or neighbor, but really for us. What is the best path for us? And so we're going to go a little bit further with that as well. So as it is spring, maybe some of you have seen all the nice flowers out. I just wanted to read one of my favorite quotes from William Blake. I'm guessing many of you are familiar with it. So, to see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. To hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. This condensing of time and space, all time and space, within a moment, is also what we're going to see with the Gita too. And what that can do when we really experience that. So keeping in mind Camus and our Sisyphus pushing the rock up and down the hill, being happy, and then Blake's looking at a single flower and finding the universe within that flower, within that grain of sand, all of time and space, in those two simple, very simple things. All right, so let's go a little further. Let's put the Gita a little bit into context, because the last thing I want to do is assume that we know what the Gita is. Because the best way to make an ass out of you and me, right, is to assume. Some of you know that. So I'm not assuming you know what the Gita is. Some of you do, some of you don't. There's going to be various layers today. The Gita, again, like I said, is often one of two main texts that we have in a yoga teacher training. And for some people, it's their favorite book, such as Gandhi. Gandhi not only was very into this book, but he translated it and he read parts of it on a daily basis. Again, why? Just by saying, ooh, Gandhi read it. Ooh, you should read it. Ooh. We still don't know why. It needs to speak to us. It really needs to speak to us. So let's put the Gita a little bit into context. What does the word even mean? What does the title mean? Bhagavad Gita. Gita is a past passive participle of gai. Gai is to sing. So it's a thing that is sung. It's a song. Gita is song. Bhagavad is of the Blessed One, the one who possesses Bhaga. So it's a song of the Blessed One. It can be the song of the Lord. It can be song of God. There's various ways to translate that. And that might make some people uncomfortable. Ooh, we're going to be talking about God today. Yes, we are. And Krishnamacharya, one of the, if not the grandfather of modern yoga, one of his great concerns about yoga was nobody wanted to talk about God. This is not going to be a sermon, but there are some elements we need to go a little further with. And again, some people will turn it off and say, ooh, I don't want to talk about that. I'm spiritual but not religious. Okay, fine, whatever that means. We can go further with that too. So, Bhagavad Gita, the song of the Lord, the song of the Blessed One. Well, which Lord? Which God? Well, there's two main characters. Krishna. Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu, who's one of the main gods, the preserver, but also even bigger of Brahma. And Brahma is also this Atma. Okay, now I'm getting all these words, so let's break that down. So Krishna is the human embodiment of the universal soul. Avatar means to come down. So, in other words, Krishna has manifested in a physical human body on earth. He's first character. And in this story, the story is about a battle. So there's two giant armies. And Krishna is a charioteer for the second character, Arjuna. Arjuna is a warrior, which is going to be important soon. And so it's a civil war, big, huge armies of families on each side. And it's part of a bigger epic. Now, the word epic's been thrown around a lot. Well, the true sense of an epic is this big story. Epic. Mahabharata is an epic. The Odyssey and the Iliad are epics. So the Mahabharata is this big story about this battle. And the Bhagavad Gita is a little tiny part of that big epic. So it's in medias res. So it's in the middle of things. We're in the middle of this big battle. It's been raging on, and then here we are. So that's one aspect. It's a story. And it's a dialogue between Krishna, the manifestation of the universe, and Arjuna, man, or human. Now further, we need to see where it fits in with yoga. And we talked about last time that Yoga Sutras, more or less, are around 200 BCE to 300 AD, more or less, this 500 period. Well, the Bhagavad Gita fits into this type of text we call the Upanishads. And Upanishads were questioning texts, questioning about God, questioning about the universe, questioning about the self. And a lot of times they were dialogues. And so it's a philosophical dialogue, it's a spiritual dialogue, it's a religious dialogue, it's a metaphysical dialogue. It's a lot of different ways to look at this dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. But what we need to know is the Upanishads then are starting to bring it down to this human level. So before that, it was these big impersonal gods. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, bigger, like the Titans again, the big Titans of Greek mythology. But now we're starting to get on the human level. This is a human story. Very human story. So here we are, Dharma Kshetre, Kuru Kshetre, Samaveta, Yuyutsavaha, Mamakas, Pandavas Chaiva, Kima Kurvata, Sinjaha. So on this field, Kshetre, on this field of Dharma, on the field of the Kurus. Now the Kurus were one of the families. On the field of Dharma, the metaphysical Dharma, and on the physical battlefield. Here are these two armies, mine and the Pandavas, ready for battle, desirous for battle. What happened? Well, what happened? Arjuna is this great warrior. Here he is in the middle of this battle. His troops are looking to him. He's a hero. So what does he do? He goes in the middle of the battle, puts his chariot down, puts down his bow and arrow, and says, I give up. I can't do this. It's too much. It's too much. Breaks down physically and mentally on the battlefield. He has a full-blown meltdown. He's shaking, he's crying, he's trembling. This is this great warrior. And he says to Krishna, who he does not know is God at this point, which is very important, keep that in mind, I cannot go on. I don't want to go on. I will not go on. That is where we are. This is the Bhagavad Gita, is how to get Krishna up from this crumpled lump in the middle of this battlefield. How do we get him up? And Krishna says, Natvam shotitam arhasi. You're not worthy of this grief because you're actually not seeing the bigger picture. And again, Krishna has not revealed himself to be God yet. So Arjuna is kind of like, thanks a lot. Really needed some hugs here. But Krishna is saying, you're not even worthy of this grief. That's pretty harsh words. But he sees Arjuna. And he has compassion for him. And then he does instruct Arjuna. And that is, again, the rest of the Gita. He begins to teach him. Because he realizes just telling him to do something, he's not going to do it. He needs to teach him. He needs to guide him. He needs to bring him up and give him courage. And so that's what happens. And in the Gita, in Book 2, so Book 1 is just telling about the battle. Book 2, like the Yoga Sutras we talked about, Book 1 has samadhi, which is the big word, and it's like everything happens in Book 1. In the Gita, we learn everything we need to know right away too, about dharma and karma. So Krishna gives his whole teaching in Book 2, but it's too much. Because Arjuna is still crying, and he's still broken, and he's still melted down. So Krishna says, okay, all this wonderful wisdom in Book 2, but in one ear and out the other with Arjuna. He's too wrapped up in his own self-pity to listen. A lot of times when we're wrapped up in that self-pity, we don't listen to what's being said. And so Krishna, it says, as if laughing. So he's not really mocking him, but he feels bad. He goes, okay, yeah, I get it. This is tough. And then he starts to instruct Arjuna slowly and giving him instructions about how to live through yoga and giving him these options. And this is where we're going. So in Book 2, he says that a buddhi-yukto is somebody who has a mind or buddhi or intellect that is composed and equal-minded, not all over the place, not freaking out, but somebody who's equal in sukrit and dukrit, so good things and bad. And he says, tasmat yogaya yujasva yoga karmasu kaushalam. Now this is a big thing because this is a definition of yoga. He says that because the person who is even-keeled can deal with the good things and the bad things, therefore, yoke yourself, yujasva, to yoga, yogaya. Because yoga is skill in actions, karmasu. So we've had dharma to begin with. Dharma is this bigger law we'll get to, or self-duty. And now karma, we're told that is the core of yoga is skill in all of the actions that we do. And then when we do that, that mindfulness we talked about last time, and just to remember that mindfulness is just the simple things, such as cutting carrots when you're cooking, such as washing the dishes, such as folding the clothes, whatever, the daily things we're doing now, you do mindfully with attention, and that keeps this even keel. Now, that's not always possible. There's noise, there's sounds, there's kids, everything. There's all kinds of stuff. But it's coming back to that, take it simple, one little thing at a time. Karmasu, in all the actions. Okay? So then Krishna goes on in Book 2 to still talk about a little bit more about what yoga is. And it is this balancing the mind so you're not overrun by the senses. Indriyani, the senses. For what end? What's going to happen? Ultimately, he says, prasadam adhigachati, which means that one obtains prasada. Now, what is prasada? Prasada can be translated as grace. So he goes towards grace. That's really what Book 2 is giving us. So we have duty, dharma, in actions, brings us to grace. Adhigachati literally means brings us to. But how? How? How do we get that grace? How do we get that prasada? And it's not a goal, it's what happens. Very important. It's not a goal, it's what happens. Okay, so here we are. We have Arjuna, Krishna on the battlefield. Arjuna has broken down. He's weeping. Krishna says, get up. Stand up. You know the rest. He says, your duty is to fight. Now, this is where people get a little confused with the Gita. And this is when people say, well, how could Gandhi say the Gita was his guide for Dharma if Krishna says, get up and fight? Gandhi did the opposite, ahimsa, non-violence, okay? It was Arjuna's Dharma as a warrior, not yours, not mine, not Krishna's. It was Arjuna's, and I think that gets lost in the shuffle. Krishna's talking to Arjuna, saying, this is your Dharma. Now, why do you have to do this? Because if you don't do this, then the next person doesn't do it, and the next person doesn't do it, and the next person doesn't do it. And ultimately, Krishna says, if I don't do my duty, and what is Krishna's duty, is maintaining the balance of the universe, because he's an avatar of Vishnu. So he's maintaining the balance of the universe. If he doesn't do his duty, the universe literally falls apart. But again, Arjuna hasn't quite got it yet. He's still stuck in like, boo-hoo, poor me, poor me. Why is this happening to me? Why me? Why me? His big klesha here, his obstacle, is the ignorance, the avidya of asmita, of why me? Why to me? Why does this happen to me? He's still in that state of ignorance. So Krishna is very patient. He's God. He has all the time in the world. Literally. So he's patient and he says, okay, we're going to take this step by step. And so then from here we start to get these teachings of Krishna about the different types of yoga. And we're going to focus on 3. So there's going to be 3 types of yoga that come up today. First one is karma yoga. Second one is going to be jnana yoga. Jnana. Jnana. And then the last one is bhakti. So we're going to learn like which each one of these are and then how we can apply them possibly to ourselves. And that's really that why of the Gita. What can we get out of it? What can we get out of this? Are these different types of yoga that can apply to us? And then guess what? One size does not fit all. There's not one type of yoga for everyone. There are many. There's many marga, the paths. It's how we walk that path that's more important. Do we walk it mindfully or carelessly? That's really what it comes down to. With kaushalam, with skill, or without. So, Krishna says, okay, Arjuna, look, I know things are rough. I know life really sucks right now. But let's move on. So he says there's two types of yoga to begin. First one is karma, and then the second one is jnana. Karma yoga you may be familiar with from the word karma. Karma means action. Action. Not good or bad, just pure action. Plain and simple. Krit means to do or to make. Karma is the thing done, action. So we have karma yoga and jnana yoga. Now this may not look familiar to you, but the way I like to point out is this jnana turns into gnosis in Greek into kano in English. This means to know. This is the yoga of knowledge. So Krishna first talks about these two, the yoga of karma and the yoga of knowledge. They're not for everybody. Again, some people, karma yoga is the right path. Works, good deeds, whatever, no, let's scratch that good deeds. Works. Works with awareness. Karma. And that's one of the paths that we learn in the Gita. Mind the cat. Karma yoga. And so Krishna basically tells Arjuna, you know what? This one's probably for you. Because, as I also like to say, Arjuna is not the brightest bulb in the batch. Not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Takes Arjuna quite a while to get the point. But Krishna says, okay, karma yoga might be for you. In other words, to act in accordance with who you are. To go not against your nature, but to go with who you are. And again, we haven't figured out how to get there yet. Arjuna is still like, okay, yeah, that sounds great, but I still don't want to fight. So book 3 of the Gita is talking about the karma yoga. And then learning how and when to act is the most important thing. Because when to act and when not to act are both part of karma yoga. Karma and akarma. So when to act, karma, and akarma, when not to act. So sometimes we need to act, and sometimes back off. Sometimes we need to talk, and sometimes we need silence. So karma yoga is learning that discretion, that viveka. Viveka is this critical judgment about when to act and when not to. So that's one of the things. And Krishna is like, this is probably for you. Yeah. This is yoga of action. And as we talked about last time, there's a lot of karma yoga going on in the world right now. People acting that have the skills, the kaushalam, in the medical field, for example. That's karma yoga, plain and simple. Could not think of a better example. That's karma yoga. Doing what you can with the skills that you have for the benefit of others. Karma yoga. Second one is jnana yoga. And that's that thinking. Now this is for some, not for others. Again, Krishna is giving us these choices because ultimately it will be a choice. It will be this concept of free will of choice. So the jnana yoga is then this thinking yoga. Now, what does that mean? It's again coming back to that concept we saw in the Yoga Sutras of avidya. So it's the ignorance. So it's removing, if we remove this little a, we have vidya, which is knowledge. So this is our state. We remove the a, and we get vidya, and that's knowledge. Now, it's knowledge again of the self. And how do we do that? This is where we could plug in the Yoga Sutras. Because Yoga Sutras is really the Jnana Yoga, the Raja Yoga, the yoga of awareness. So we could plug in the 8 limbs here at this point. Because ultimately, what do we say yoga was at the time of the Gita and the Sutras was this meditation, mindfulness, learning about the self, svadhyaya. And so book 6 is actually Krishna saying how to perform this meditation. And it's one of the first or only instructions of how to meditate in yoga is in book 6 of the Gita. And that's really more for this jnana yoga, this yoga of the mind. That turning inwards and holding a mirror up to the self and really looking. So as I mentioned to somebody the other day, it's funny how a train wreck makes us look to the suffering of others. Then when we're given this mirror, we're more averse to that. There's more dvesha to that mirror of ourselves than the raga, the passion of looking at a train wreck. Very strange thing about us. So here we are. So we have the yoga of karma and the yoga of jnana, knowledge. And so Krishna goes further and he's really explaining. Today is just tip of the iceberg. I'm just laying out the basics of the Gita. Now each one of these words we could do a whole hour or months on. This is just a general introduction. So at this point we have 2 forms of yoga. Arjuna is starting to warm up a little bit. He's starting to go, okay, all right, this is getting interesting, but I still don't get it. I still don't want to fight. I'm still not there. And again, Krishna has been patient. So Krishna starts to pull out his ace in the hole. Now things start to get a little more serious because he's outlined how to do yoga, why yoga is beneficial, the concept of action and not action, the concept of svadhyaya, learning about the self. But Arjuna is lacking something very important, and that's where we're at now. Arjuna is lacking reverence. Reverence to who Krishna is. Reverence to the bigger situation. Because at this point, Krishna is still stuck in asmita, the why me, boo-hoo, why me. He is still stuck in that ignorance of asmita. You can only see it from his point of view. So, Krishna pulls out the big gun, so to speak. And that's where we get to Book 11. Book 11 is what you could call an apocalypse. Now that word's been thrown around a lot lately. The zombie apocalypse, right? What does apocalypse really mean? It comes from the Greek and it literally means to pull away what's covering, to open the curtain. So an apocalypse that's where you get the translation revelation. It's pulling apart the curtain. It's, the Wizard of Oz. Don't mind the guy behind the curtain. She looks behind the curtain. That's the apocalypse. That is the revelation of reality. And it's like, ooh, it's just some fat old guy from Kansas. Yikes. Book 11 is Krishna's revelation, Krishna's apocalypse. And this is when Arjuna gets the message. Because this is what it takes. Because we can be we can be exposed to the Gita. We can be exposed to other great works of thinking or art. We can be exposed to wildfires in Australia. We can be exposed to the Amazon burning. We can be exposed. I'm not preaching. I'm just saying. We can be exposed to a lot of things. And go, oh, okay, yeah, I got it. Next. Oh, yeah, I got it. Next. Oh yeah, I got it, I got it. And that's kind of what Arjuna is doing. He's kind of nodding his head. He's saying, yeah, I got it, I got it, I got it. Yeah, I'll send a few bucks. Yeah, I got it. Click. Krishna's like, no. Let's go a little step further. Krishna then is going to say, okay, look, I'm going to really show you. I'm going to apocalypse. I'm going to pull away the curtains now. And then you're going to see the light. You're going to see reality for what it is. And so at this point, Krishna gives Arjuna what he calls divine sight. So he gives him this divine sight. And what does he do? Because Arjuna is saying, yeah, I want to see this. I want to see this. And Krishna kind of pulls the Jack Nicholson, like, you can't handle the truth. Well, he really can't, as we will soon see. But he agrees and he says, okay, I'm going to let you see it. He gives him divine sight, and then Krishna literally goes, and he goes, I'm the universe. And it scares the living hell out of Arjuna because it is so terrifying but beautiful at the same time. It's awesome and awful. It creates this awe, sense of awe, so much because it is literally all time and space at once. And this is where we get this concept of 1,000, he says it's like a splendor of 1,000 suns. If they were burning in the sky, that would be how brilliant this is. So it's this unbelievable experience of power, glory, light. But at the same time, it's terrifying because Krishna is also death. Krishna is the destroyer of everything as well. Not only is he the light, he's also all destruction as well. It says, Kalo asmi lokasya krit. Kashaya krit. Get your quotes right, Robert. Destroyer of worlds. I am time, destroyer of worlds. That's what Krishna says. It's like this. So think of Galadriel, right, in Lord of the Rings. You know, when she exposes herself to Frodo, and Frodo's like, oh my God. Yeah, oh my God. And that's what's going on, this crazy brightness, and then he, in this crazy voice, Krishna says, I am time, destroyer of all. Whew. Okay, yeah, Krishna is literally trembling again. But you got the picture. It took that for Arjuna to get out of this headspace of boo-hoo, why me? To actually see the universe literally unfold in front of him. And then the next thing Arjuna does is he performs pranidhana. Literally, that's the verb used to Krishna. Pranidhana, we've seen in the Yoga Sutras. Ishvara pranidhana. Reverence to Krishna, because then he gets the point of Krishna is bigger. He's not just some guy with the reins of his horse. He is the universe. And then Arjuna gets humility, reverence, respect, and awe for the universe. That's the turning point. Before that, Arjuna is still only seeing things from these eyes and not seeing with the divine sight that Krishna gave him. So he performs pranidhana, supplicates before Krishna and says, teach me. I get it. Help. This is when Arjuna asks for help. Before, he was asking for pity. Before, he was asking for, feel sorry for me. Only after he sees this revelation, this apocalypse, then he goes, you know what? I need help. And then Krishna says, okay, sorry I had to do that, but you weren't getting the picture. And then he calms them down and he treats them, then the compassion comes in. Then the compassion of Krishna is shown. Before that, he's kind of a jerk. He's kind of like, hey, do this, do that. Here, scare the shit out of you. And now there's compassion. And this is the last part of the Gita. And a lot of people prefer the last part, but we need that first part to get to the last. The last part can't happen without the first. If we just read the last part of the Gita about bhakti, the last type of yoga, without experiencing Arjuna's awe and terror, then we really don't get the full impact of what the bhakti is. Because then in book 11, Krishna says, bhaktya. Bhaktya means with bhakti. So it's an instrumental for you grammar people out there. Bhaktya, with bhakti alone, you can see my divine form. So now, bhakti is introduced as the third type of yoga. Bhakti is reverence. Bhakti is the reverence for Krishna as the universe. Not Krishna as the man, Krishna as this cosmic force, bigger picture. And again, this is the turning point when Arjuna gets the picture, when he sees. Then the last part of the Gita seems like it's a different story, and it kind of is. It seems like you could put two together. But this is where we introduce the concept of Bhakti Yoga. And what is Bhakti Yoga then? Bhakti Yoga is again this reverence for the bigger picture. Now, reverence is one of my favorite words, if you will. Here's a book written by an old colleague of mine at the University of Texas, Paul Woodruff. He's a philosophy and ancient Greek scholar, but he wrote this book on reverence. I just want to give you his definition real quick. Reverence begins in a deep understanding of human limitations. From this grows the capacity to be in awe of whatever we believe lies outside our control. God, truth, justice, nature, even death. So it's this humility again that Arjuna had to experience to open up his vision and his acceptance that there is something bigger. And then that will be this bhakti. It can also be associated with another word that comes up in the Gita, which is shraddha. Shraddha, often translated as faith, it can really mean to make clear as well. It is, again, this sort of clarity in belief. And so at this point now, the dust has been cleared, the curtains have been revealed, and Arjuna can see clearly with an open heart, with an open mind, and then he can move forward. But it takes those openings of those. And then at that point, he is open for prasada. He's open for Krishna's grace. Because then Krishna shows compassion. After Arjuna has realized, wow, it's not about me. It's not just about me. So here we are. Then what can we do with these? Bhakti, karma, and jnana. What can we do with these yogas, and how do we then apply them to our own lives? So the Gita goes on to tell about the tamas, tamaha, raja, and sattva. So these are the three gunas that are introduced at this point, and we heard about those in the Yoga Sutras. These are the qualities or characteristics that combine and mix to make up the universe. And when we have our yoga, whether it's through karma, whether it's through jnana, or whether it's through the bhakti, we can start to identify these gunas with ourselves and the world around us. So to begin, we have the tamas. Tamas is this darkness or heaviness or sluggishness. And this is where Arjuna was when he crumples down on the battlefield and says, I can't go on. He's destroyed as a man, as a human. He's full of this inertia. He can't move, he can't act. Krishna's revelation or apocalypse could be considered this rajas. It stirs him up. Now, rajas means chaos and confusion and excitement and energy. And sometimes we need that to get us up, lift us up out of this tamas. Because it's very easy to fall in tamas in certain times. And so maybe we need the rajas to shake us up a bit, but we can't stay in that. We can't stay in this state of, oh my God, panic, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. That's exhausting for everyone. At some point, things have got to become settled. It's like muddy water getting stirred up, swirling around, swirling around. Some points it settles down, and then we start to see the sattva. Sattva is that clarity. And again. So we have the gunas, and then through our yoga practice, through mindful actions, through the karma, through the svadhyaya, through the self-knowledge, and then through the bhakti of seeing the bigger picture that's bigger than us, that reverence that Arjuna found, we can start to see how these gunas are playing off each other. And so we don't get stuck in tamas, or we don't stay in this state of anxiety and panic and rajas or confusion. That we can bring an element of sattva to that, a moment of clarity in this maelstrom, this storm. We can bring some sattva. And again, this takes time. This doesn't happen like this. Yoga is a process. So all of these are a process. And it comes back to this concept again of humility. Now, some of you may be familiar with the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. So Odysseus has been fighting in this war, another battle story, and he needs to get home. Well, it's a long trip, and it takes him another 10 years. So the war was 10 years, it takes him 10 years to get home. Now, we can't really feel sorry for Odysseus because he gets all of his men killed. He hangs out with a beautiful nymph, all the while crying for Penelope back home in Ithaca. But it is his journey, and he does get home. But before that, he has to go to the underworld, to Hades. And there's a river, the Letha River, which means to forget. And when you drink from that in the underworld, you forget about life. And then you go off and you hang out with the other shades or the other spirits. So this letha makes you forget. But in ancient Greek, aletheia means to remove the forgetfulness. So Odysseus is seeking the truth in the underworld. And he meets Tiresias, the blind, androgynous soothsayer that we saw at the beginning of the Wasteland of T.S. Eliot, or in Wasteland. And Tiresias says, okay, you have to, after all this is said and done, you get your revenge, blah, 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 kill all the suitors, yeah, yada, yada, yada. Then you have to go with an oar, like a rowing oar, inland, and keep walking with his oar over your shoulder until people don't know what that is. So in other words, he has to go so far away from the sea with his oar that people don't know. They're like, what is this? They think it's a farming tool. And at that point, he has to plant the oar into the ground in honor of Poseidon. What? Poseidon. Poseidon's the god of the ocean. Why? Because Odysseus had not shown reverence to the ocean. The one thing that would take him home, he killed Poseidon's son, Polyphemus, the Cyclops, and mocked him. And that's why Odysseus doesn't get home, because he did not show reverence to Poseidon, to nature. And so his punishment, if you will, is this humility of, because he's known for being a seafarer, right? For the sea. He has to go somewhere where people don't recognize him, and in all humility plant this oar to show reverence to Poseidon. And that's a similar situation with what we have with Arjuna, is that he has to see it's not about you. It's about the bigger picture again. And so this reverence, this sense of awe, so that Odysseus has a sense of respect for the ocean again, then he can carry on with his life. He has to gain that sense of respect because he did not respect it. He lost the reverence for it. All right. So then we're towards the end of the Gita with the gunas, and then we see the gunas, these characteristics of how they interact with us. So if we're stuck in tamas, if we have too much rajas, and we try to bring some clarity. But then ultimately, through yoga, as we saw in the Yoga Sutras, we even want to go beyond, find the cat. We want to go beyond the gunas. Now, what does that mean? Do we go outside of nature? No. We don't become overwhelmed by them. We don't become controlled by these external forces. Now, that's a tricky one. That's very hard. I know that. I'm not saying this is easy. It's being aware, though, that we're sometimes being pulled this way and that. Sometimes we're being pulled by the inertia to go sit on the couch. Sometimes we're pulled by the chaos of what's going on around us. And it's those times sometimes we look for that sattva. And that is the tricky part. And it doesn't happen all the time. But then we don't become overwhelmed by the external forces. And again, this is over time and time and time again. We're not looking for a quick fix. All right. So the Gita. We learn about what is the karma, is the actions that we do. We can apply what we learn with the Yoga Sutras about doing actions with mindfulness. We can have the path of the self-knowledge. We can learn about the self, know thyself, gnosi sauton, know thyself. And then we have the reverence for the bigger picture. So these are at least 3 of the paths that we can find ourselves on, which the Gita gives us. Ultimately, though, Krishna does not say, you have to do this. There is this element of free will. And that sounds very strange, because how is that possible if Krishna knows everything? Because he does still say there needs to be a choice to act. Because Krishna says at any moment I could choose not to act. I could choose not to sustain this universe, and then it all falls apart. But he does it again because it's the next right thing to do. Now, we all have our different battles. And this is where the metaphor of the spiritual warrior comes from. And a lot of times you'll hear that in connection with the Gita. So Arjuna is a physical warrior. Now, not many of us, or maybe none of us, are physical warriors in this world. Maybe some of you have been. Paul Woodruff was. He was in Vietnam War, Special Forces. Some people are the physical warriors, but then there's the metaphysical warrior, and this is also where the Gita comes in too. And this is how people will apply it within the yoga practice. The metaphysical, the spiritual war within, But is it really a war? No, it's not. That would mean you're doing violence to yourself. It's a conflict that requires solution or resolution through this negotiation of the self. And the way that Gandhi used this, for example, was through the ahimsa. It was not through violence. It was through the negotiation of this battlefield that was going on. How best to resolve the situation. So if you read the Gita and you come out of it and you say, okay, I don't know which path, well, that's kind of the point, because it is about finding it for yourself. It's not about do this one or do that one. It's about finding that through your experience. Now, some of you may have been watching some series on TV or Netflix. One of the ones I picked up again with a friend that we're watching is 6 Feet Under. Maybe you've seen that. Still holds up as amazing tragic comedy. But the tagline is everybody dies. And it's about this family of caretakers, undertakers, who do funeral home, right? But I'm going to add something, well, okay, everybody dies, but not everybody lives. And that's kind of what the Gita is saying too, is that there is this natural cycle of physically living and physically dying. But to live is different than just breathing and eating and being this animal creature on the planet. The living is that finding these paths, the Dharma. And it doesn't have to be big. Again, so the Bhagavad Gita is within the context of an epic, but this is not about being epic. And again, I'm going to really drive that point home. It's the small things. Another show I'm watching again. I know some of you are Gotham fans out there. And Alfred is telling Bruce Wayne, right? It's the little things that matter most when everything else falls apart. It's the little things that matter the most. And that again is what we're looking at through Krishna's message. Is karmasu, in actions, our skill within actions. And then how do we do that? Through yoga. And you find the yoga that works for you. And you will. You will. It happens. It takes time and it takes patience. But there is the revelation, the opening up of like which path works for you. And we're all different. We all find different paths. Now some of them may look similar. We're still all finding our own. And again, that's where the Gita speaks to us on this human level. My friend and colleague Elsie likes to say that it's a human story, and it is a human story. Even though it's between this manifestation of God and this individual. We have that connection and that yoga, that binding, bringing together the human and the divine, the from below as above. But it's not bringing them together, it's realizing they were never separate. Because that is the core of that avidya that we've seen in the sutras and here in the Gita. The avidya is thinking there's separation between this thing here, you out there, this around us. Thinking there's a separation is where it gets us into trouble. All right. Introduction to the Gita. Again, that's just scratching the surface. There's a big iceberg underneath there. We've seen the tip of it. Wishing you all the best in these weeks, days, minutes, and hours. Gets confusing. If you're celebrating Easter, happy Easter. If Passover is in your life, wishing you well there. Spring, all of us. Remembering those wildflowers that we can see and the grain of sand, the eternity and the infinity of the universe into small things. Don't go epic. Stay small. Then it's manageable. Thank you again for showing up. Super nice to see everyone's names popping up here and there. And we will be doing this again next Sunday. We'll be looking at sort of the evolution, if you will, or the change, the parinama of yoga from meditation to asana based in the modern world. How did that happen? Very interesting story. But that's to continue. For now, I'm going to go ahead and finish up with, which I forgot to do last time, but I would like to say it again. So it's loka. Loka is the worlds, and again, all the worlds. Samasta, samasta, those that are in harmony. Sukhino, possessing happiness. Bhavantu, let those worlds in harmony possess happiness. Loka, samasta, Sukhino bhavantu. And then we finish with the 3 times Shanti. Shanti is peace. And it's, I hate to say it's just grammar, but it's Shanti, Shanti, Shantihi. And it's peace, peace, peace. So Loka, Samasta, Sukhino bhavantu. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Take care of yourselves and see you again soon. Namaste. Respect and reverence to you.